Hello and welcome back to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel, your source for all things Everton. My name is Thomas, back on the channel today with another unique video. We brought on a very special guest again, Paul, the Esk on Twitter. We're going to talk about finance, we're going to talk about transfers, why Everton haven't been particularly busy in terms of spending high fees on players, why they might have, resorted to spending, nothing, basically 2 free transfers and a very low price on Demarai Gray, and what kind of position we find ourselves in this transfer window and going forward. So Paul, thanks for coming on. How are you doing today?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Thomas. Very pleased to enjoy you. Very pleased to join you. Good to be here.
Well, it's fantastic. Thank you very much for coming back on. And I want to start just kind of talking about the transfers that we have made, because I know when the rumours came out, everyone was pretty underwhelmed. That names like Andros Townsend, Begovic, Demarai Gray, that hasn't been doing brilliantly he didn't do brilliant by Leverkusen. That's clearly why he's come back to England. Never quite hit the heights at Leicester, but there's clearly one, key factor behind why we brought these transfers in, and that is in terms of their cost. The adding depth. So, just with those signings, how significant is it that we've got 2 free transfers? One very cheap. We've already shipped out, the likes of Bernard, and Walcott's obviously left. That was announced a while ago, but his wage is off the bill. Players like Yannick Bolasie as well. So, what do those 3 signings kind of signify from the club's position anyway, compared to the wages that have now been kind of got off the wage bill?
Sure. I think it signifies one significant thing, and that's the days of sort of spending huge sums of money in the transfer window, at least in the short term, are over. And depending upon how you want to think about what the stadium lenders and the stadium financiers will want us to do, it might be over for a number of years, at least until we get into Bramley-Moore itself. So whether it's regulatory, I do think it's regulatory why we've spent so little money so far, or whether you actually believe Mashiri's really pulled in the reins, which I think there's an element of that, because I don't think he was expecting to be paying for the stadium at this particular point. I think he was hoping that funds came from the private lenders that he's spoken about previously, but obviously they haven't. So he's had to put money that no doubt he's allocated for Everton at some point into the club now, as against at some point in the future, or indeed for transfers themselves. So I think it's a combination of those 2 factors. The other point, I suppose, is that we've not yet been successful in selling any of the players that aren't sort of core to what we want to do in the future. And I think that's a reflection of 3 things. It's the players themselves, the wages that they're on, and the market generally. Now, the transfer activity that we've seen in the last sort of 24, 48 hours or so, that may free up a bit of cash to start moving around the system. But an awful lot of football clubs are perhaps not quite in as difficult a position as we are, but are nevertheless in a reasonably difficult position because of COVID.
Absolutely. And you mentioned there that you think it's kind of regulatory. It's not that Mashiri's ran out of money. It's not that we can't afford to make these transfers, because I keep seeing these tweets where it's like, how come everyone struggled? Manchester City have obviously just forked out 100 million for Jack Grealish. I'm not sure how much United spent on Sancho. That was 80+ million. And people keep talking about financial fair play, in that, how are these clubs still allowed to spend this massive money, but Everton aren't? But I'm not too familiar with the ins and outs of it, but it's not that simple as that. I mean, City and United's revenues are just way higher than ours. They can kind of afford that, but it's clearly got to a point with our financial fair play is where we've made too much of a loss in the past couple of years, and that's why we can't be forking out for those massive transfers.
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly complex because of the way COVID affects it at this moment in time, but our losses are so significant. So effectively, over a 3-year period, although at the moment it's over a 4-year period with an average for the 2 COVID years, you can lose, as far as the Premier League rules are concerned, up to £105 million. Now, that's not what is shown in the accounts. That's what's shown in the accounts minus a number of things that you can take out. So, for example, you can take out any costs relating to women's football, any costs relating to the community, and any costs relating to the academy. They can all be removed, as can losses that are directly related to COVID. And the losses that are directly related to COVID are going to be the lack of match day revenue, because obviously the stadium's being closed, any loss of commercial income as a result of the stadium being closed, and any other match day income that we might have lost, or any other additional costs that we may have incurred because of COVID. Now, again, it's obviously difficult on a podcast to sort of go through all the figures, but if you say, okay, so even if you take into account all of those elements that I've just spoken about, women's, youth, academy, and COVID costs, do we get anywhere near the £105 million, which is what the rules say is the maximum that you can lose before you break the rules? And it's my belief that we can't. Now, I say it's my belief because actually one of the difficulties in this is that whilst you can use some historic data, you have to use current data as well, and that data won't be available publicly until the end of this year, 2021, December 2021. Normally, the accounts normally come out around December. So I've got to make some calculations of my own. So therefore, there is I accept, and I would ask people to understand, there's a margin of error in what I'm saying. But is that margin of error within distance of how close we're going to be to getting in or not getting into the rules? And I believe even with a big margin of error in my figures, we're still likely to have been over that limit. Now, what does that mean for this year? Well, it probably means that if we are close to the limit or over the limit, Everton and the Premier League have come to possibly some sort of arrangement that says we're only going to spend this amount unless we sell, this amount. So any activity that we do going forward, I think, is going to be conditional upon what we can sell in the rest of the window. And that, of course, has been the difficulty for Marcel Brands for really since his time here, that there's people here on contracts that they wouldn't get elsewhere, and as a result, some of those people, at least, and some of those players, at least, are not prepared to move.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No. So it's a really, we've painted ourselves into a really difficult corner. We can, the club can legitimately say, well, nobody could have ever forecast what was going to happen with regards to COVID, and I accept that entirely. That's the same for any business around the world. But the bad decisions that we made, the bad recruitment decisions that we've made, both in terms of managers and in terms of the players that they wanted to bring in, and indeed the players that the owner and the director of football have wanted to bring in, because it's not just been one person that's been buying over the last 5 years, it's been a number. They've all caught up with us. All of those bad decisions that we've made, or all of those decisions that we made and then subsequently they didn't turn out the way that we wanted them to. Financially, they've all caught up with us, and a lot of people say, well, FFP, is a lot of people refer to it. FFP is not a Premier League thing. It's been relaxed. Well, in Europe, it has been relaxed. So the previous limits that existed in Europe, at least in the short term, have been relaxed, and UEFA basically said we're going to turn a blind eye to what's happened financially in the last year or two, and then we'll pick it up again probably this season as things start to get back to normal and a lot of people start playing in front of fee-paying crowds. But the Premier League hasn't done that. The Premier League has made adjustments to its rules so that COVID can be taken into account, but it hasn't said we're going to turn a blind eye. So the rules are very much still there, and they're very much being enforced. So if we are over it, then we're going to be subject to whatever decisions they want to make.
Yeah, and it's entirely a problem we've made for ourselves. We see a lot of abuse kind of thrown at the Premier League, thrown at the bigger clubs like your Manchester City and your Manchester United, who are who can afford those transfers, and it's not their fault. These are problems we've caused ourselves over the past basically since Moshiri took over. It was the disastrous start with Koeman and Walsh. it hasn't necessarily improved since then. Okay, Ancelotti made some great signings last year, and they clearly did make that instant impact, but they are also still short-term signings. Like Alan, he signed for what, 25 million? He's 30 plus. Decore is 30 as well. These were signings that were clearly brought in to make that instant impact. Hopefully under Ancelotti, we didn't end up getting European football. So even though they are making a good impact now, those footballers, that was still kind of short-term thinking. It wasn't necessarily, it was acknowledged that it was short-term thinking. Don't get me wrong. It was clear that they brought in those players for the instant impact that they have made, but they will also be players that in a couple of years we're not going to get the same return on, apart from, Ben Godfrey, for example. We don't really know what's going on with James Rodriguez. So even then, this kind of transfer business, it hasn't stopped. The mistakes we made, it's just last year, clearly we made a conscious effort to improve the squad drastically, and we finished 10th, which is a unfortunate situation to be in, but it all still contributes to the finances. And I think we've now reached a point where I'm personally I'm not mad at the Premier League or anyone, because a lot of people, they want us to keep on spending, carry on making these mistakes basically. But I'm of the opinion, I'm not sure about yourself, but I'm of the opinion I don't mind that these rules are coming into place now, because I don't want to see the club run into the ground at the end of the day. We've already seen machineries put up the money, the first kind of round of funding for the stadium. It will get to a point where we've been living in dreamland for the past few years in terms of kind of ignoring the restrictions and pushing the limit and pushing the boat out. But it's clear now that the reality is setting in on the club. Well, as far as we know, it's not like we have the same kind of transparency as Aston Villa have had in that fantastic video about Grealish. But it has now got to a point where, I mean, I don't really mind that the rules are finally kicking in, because I don't want to see the club reach to a point where we literally just can't keep spending. We can't keep spending. It has to be more thought out, more considered. I'm not sure what your views are on that. That maybe this is not a bad thing that the rules are now hitting us, because we are a completely unsustainable model at the moment.
Yes, we are unsustainable for one simple reason, that our costs are much greater than our income. And then you have to say, well, okay, so what can we do about costs? What can we do about income? In the short term, there's very little we can do about income, because Goodison is going to play out to full capacity crowds for all season, assuming that there's no change in public health policy. We sell out every single season ticket that we have. We sell out every single expensive tickets that we have in terms of hospitality and stuff. So you could argue that perhaps we might want to increase season ticket prices to generate income, but that's not really going to do a huge amount. A couple of million here or there isn't really going to make a difference. Our commercial performance, I've been one of the biggest critics of our commercial performance. It's still not good. If you strip out USN from the figures, there's not a huge amount of growth. I think that's an area where we could improve enormously. And then it's down to performance on the pitch in terms of generating more income. So clearly, the higher up the league we finish, the more money we get from the Premier League in terms of prize money. The more attractive football we play, arguably, the more times we'll be on the television or on the various channels that are available now. And ultimately, it's about European qualification for European football. The costs that we incurred at the end of the last transfer window in bringing in Alain Doucouré and James was all based on the idea that under Carlo Ancelotti we weren't guaranteed, but that the bottom line was your qualification for European football, and then that qualification in the season that we're just about to start would have covered the costs of that investment made last summer. So it would have been less of an issue for us. But as we all know, we went from being second on Boxing Day to dropping out of European qualification places. So that ultimately is going to be is one of the key things that's put us in the position that we're in now. We would have earned anything from 10 to 50, 60, 70 million euros, depending upon which competition we were in and how far into the competition, European competition, we would have got this year. That would have made all the difference to what we could probably have spent this summer. Now, but then to go back to the point made previously, that's then compounded with us unable to sell the players that we want to sell. I'm pretty sure that Moise Kean was always in the plan in terms of, he'll go to PSG, and arguably if he'd been able to go to PSG in June before the end of the financial year, that would have been even better. But clearly PSG either don't want him as much as we think we want him, or they're prepared to pay hardball with a club that they probably recognise, is in a difficult financial position. So will he go? I don't know.
Yeah, it has reached a point now where it was clear there was a lot relying on Moise Kean, and if I was PSG, as you just mentioned, it's clear they're in the strongest position possible. It's clear that they wanted him again on a loan deal. That's what the majority of the rumours said. They didn't want to fork out for a permanent deal. It's all transfer rumours, transfer strategy really, and that money hasn't come. There's been a few rumours saying Rafa doesn't want him to leave. It's clear that if the right offer came in, he'd be leaving regardless. Doesn't matter what Rafa says. He's kind of the money we've got left in this squad that we can really sell on and then reinvest back into the squad. Who knows how complicated that'll be? I mean, it's not really related, but Messi now leaving Barcelona, he's very heavy linked with PSG. All of a sudden, if he's all over their wage bill, their financial problems, then could they afford a permanent transfer for Moise Kean? We don't actually know. It's all kind of the knock-on effect. There's been rumours of him going to Inter Milan as well. It's clearly it seems like maybe the next few weeks, I think, there's only a few weeks left of the transfer window, that it's either all going to explode or there's going to be nothing else happening really. So what is the situation now? You mentioned there Moise Kean was clearly, the club were relying on him to bring some investment in him. My final question really for the video is, what happens next? Maybe not necessarily just in the next few weeks of the transfer window, but for all our spending going forwards. You mentioned earlier about the stadium as well. Clearly Mashiri, he wasn't expected to have to put up the money for that, and he's not just going to keep pumping money in. It's all kind of part of his Everton fund that now that money, it's gone somewhere else. It's been allocated to the stadium. So what do Everton do now? And, how do we react going forwards, and how long might this kind of last?
I think that we have to hope that between now and the end of this month, that Raiola does his business. And, if there's ever, usually we're on the wrong side of Raiola deals. But on this occasion, if he really wants his client to move, he's got to perform his magic and get his client obviously being Moise Kean, out of the door at a price that's acceptable to us, and in a time frame that allows us to actually do something with the funds that are created from that move. There's very little point really in Moise Kean leaving on the last day of the transfer window if we can't bring in a replacement for him. So I think the timing is also, as much as the what the fees are, etc. I think the timing is really, really important, because I don't see anybody else really sort of close, or rather the players that might leave the club are not really going to impact our finances to the same extent that Moise Kean would, unless of course we bite the bullet and we say, well, actually Richarlison doesn't want to come back, or we want to get rid of DCL. But I mean, that's crazy, because that obviously as a football team puts us so far back from where we are. So I'm not advocating that in any sense at all, and I hope the club won't neither. What do we do beyond this window? The situation gets a little bit better next summer, because we lose a number of players that were bought around 2017-18. Their contracts finally expire, so we will make some savings in terms of wages next summer. But without player sales, or without a huge injection of cash from somewhere, it's going to be more of the same, because we're in a corner. As I say, we can't really increase our income levels, and whilst we're going to reduce our costs a little bit, we're still going to be we're not going to be profitable. So we're still going to be adding losses to our sort of aggregate losses, which is not a good position to be in.
Absolutely. So it seems now like what we've seen so far in the transfer window is basically what we're going to expect unless we sell someone. I think everyone's kind of known that for a while, but that is the reality, and we have kind of been kidding ourselves for the past few years, not making basically any money on transfers going out. That now it's absolutely essential. We don't buy anyone unless, I mean, Moise Kean is the big one. We don't buy anyone until he gets sold, and it seems like that's going to be the situation. But we'll have to see how it does develop. That brings me to the end of the video, though, Paul. Thanks for coming on. I mean, for our viewers, if somehow they don't know who you are, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter at the Esk, all one word, or they can find me on the Esk, or again all one word.org, which is like my sort of website.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, and everyone definitely check out the Esk. He goes into a lot more detail than we can really in this video about the finances. If that is something that does interest you. Thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to let us know your thoughts down in the comments below on everything we've discussed today. Like, subscribe. As I mentioned, check out Paul, check out all the other Toffee Blue social media, and join us next time. Thank you very much for watching.